Triathlon Show 395. Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of That Triathlon Show, the podcast presented by scientifictriathlon.com. I'm your host Michael, and on today's episode I interview Sophie Coldwell. Sophie is a short course athlete from Great Britain, currently ranked 4th in the world and 5th in the World Triathlon Championship Series, or WTCS. In this interview, we go into detail discussing Sophie's training, things that she has changed to allow her to reach the level she is currently performing at, how she's planning on maximizing her chances to qualify for the Olympic Games in Paris, and lots more. So it's a great interview. Stay tuned. But before we get into it, big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Fuel and Hydration. They help athletes perform at their best with electrolyte and fueling products, and with free online tools, education, and a patented sweat test. You can use the free Fuel and Hydration Planner on their website to get a personalized plan for your carbohydrate, sodium, and fluid intake. And you can also book a free 20-minute video consultation to chat through your plan with the athlete support team. I have used their entire range of products for many, many years now, and I think they're absolutely brilliant, so I couldn't recommend them enough. And you can get 15% off your first order by using the code TTS23 on precisionfuelandhydration.com. And thank you to Form. The Form Smart Swim Goggles give you real-time feedback in your swim training right on the goggle lens, including your splits, pace, stroke rate, and heart rate. This means that you can execute your swim workouts much better, whether it is by pushing harder when you're starting to fall off the pace or by holding back when you're accidentally going faster than you should. It also means that if you're using a Garmin or a similar watch in the pool, you can finally get rid of that because the goggles automatically notice when you start and stop each of your intervals and give you accurate splits for each and every interval without the disruption of using a watch and pressing the on and off buttons. I also think it adds a lot more fun and motivation to swimming, which is very important in order to be consistent week in, week out with going to the pool. And you can get 15% off the goggles with the code TTS15 on formswim.com/TTS. Now, without any further ado, here's the interview with Sophie Coldwell. Welcome to That Triathlon Show, Sophie. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me on.
It's a great pleasure. You have had a storming start to the season in the World Triathlon Championship Series with your results in Abu Dhabi and Yokohama, and we'll talk about that soon. But first, let's start with an introduction for those people that might not know who you are.
I'm Sophie Coldwell, British triathlete, been on the circuit a while now, based in Loughborough. And yeah, finally won my first World Series gold medal. So yeah, it's been a good year so far.
Yeah, exactly. So you got second in Abu Dhabi and then first in Yokohama, and that was really convincing win in a tough race in those conditions. So you didn't race the Cagliari, so you're not in the series lead anymore, but obviously you're in a good position for it. So how do you feel about the World Triathlon Championship Series and your start to that part of the season, but also how does it fit in with your overall goals, which I'm sure is mostly about qualifying for the Olympics as the first priority?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this beginning of this year has been great. It was more than I could have hoped for in Abu Dhabi, and then winning in Yokohama. Like, I hadn't planned to come out and do that. Obviously, you want to kind of perform as well as you can, but this year has all been geared around trying to qualify for the games. So, yeah, the A race for me is the test event in August, and then Pontevedra, the grand final. There are 2 qualification events. So it was great to come out and do those races and get those results under my belt. They're on the discretionary policy for our British triathlon selections. So although they're not, automatic selection races, like they're races that will be looked at. And then, yeah, obviously the World Series is something that I'd love to kind of end up on the podium overall in. And I am actually only doing 4 plus the grand final, so I don't have a race to drop. And I knew that coming into the season. So to kind of get 2 under my belt and, then be good results. Yeah, really happy with the start to that campaign as well.
I didn't actually know that the selection criteria has specific races that they're looking at for the discretionary slot. That's quite interesting. So maybe we can take this opportunity to talk a bit more about how the qualification process works, because there are quite a few variables to it. Basically, there are requirements from World Triathlon side for qualifying as an individual, but then the federation or the nation is who gets the slots, and then they have their own policies for how they select their athletes. So can you tell us more about how it works?
Yeah, so obviously each nation wants to try and get maximum of 3 athletes for male and female racing at the games. The introduction of the relay has meant that a lot more nations find it easier to qualify 2 men and 2 women. So we fortunately locked that in Montreal last year in the World Championship relay. We came second to France, but as France are the host nation, they already have their relay qualified. So us being second, we qualified 2 men and 2 women. Once your nation's done that, the third spot works on the rankings. So it goes to the Olympic ranking system, which is divided into 2 periods. One period which runs May 2022 to 2023, and then the second one is May 23 to 2024. So the first period's shut now, so you can have a maximum of 6 races that count in that period, and again 6 races that count in the second period. That then forms your ranking system, and if you have 3 athletes ranked inside the top 30, you will qualify 3 male or female, depending on which ranking system you look at. So fortunately on the women, we have 3 inside the top 4, I think, or 5. So we've definitely got 3 on the start list. It's something a bit more challenging for our men, and that's something that they're trying to get qualified. So we have 3 on the men's side, but fortunately we have the women's kind of sorted, so we don't need to worry about that. So then once the quotas have been set from World Triathlon, each nation then has their own selection policy on how they do that. Some nations are on rankings, some are just if you get an overall position at any World Series, and then some are stipulated to specific events. So for us, automatic, if you're a returning Olympic medalist, so Alex and Georgia, they just need a podium at the test event. That's them in automatically. For those who aren't returning medalists, they need a podium at the test event and the grand final. So that's automatic selection, no questions asked, you're in. We then have a discretionary list, which basically looks at Olympic World Series, Sprint World Series. Then relays are also on that list as well. So although they're not automatic, if you were to say have a good race at the grand final or the test event, but maybe not do the other one, or something happens or whatever, then those races can be looked at for selection. So even though it's not guaranteed, it's obviously good to have those ticked off. So if something does happen, or, they are looking at discretionary at the end of the year to fill 2 or 3 spots, like you've got that as well. So that's why a lot of nations are geared around that test event and the grand final. I know that America are around that as well. Australia look at that event. I know a lot of the nations use the test event because obviously it's on the course. So that for us is the big one of the year.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect explanation of how it works. So you have to then to get an automatic qualification podium at both the test event and the grand final. So obviously a very challenging task for anybody to do that. But then it's understandable that you have geared your season around those events to give yourself the best possible opportunity. If we roll back the clock a little bit, when and how did you get into triathlon?
I've been doing triathlon a very long time. I started when I was 8, so 20 years now, so it's quite a long time. My mum just saw a local advert for a triathlon that was at one of the local leisure centres near where we lived, took me down. At the time, it was 50-metre swim, like a 2K bike and a 500-metre run, but I couldn't even swim 50 metres front crawl, so I did 1 length front crawl, 1 length backstroke. Obviously, it was in a swimming pool at the time. And just kind of got hooked from a young age, really. And then ever since that, I've kind of done a very linear progression, I'd say, like kind of through children events that we have in the UK, regional events, all the way up through to like national series events, then on to like junior European Cups, junior championships, under 23 championships, European Cups, World Cups, and now on to World Series. So I definitely have kind of ticked every box of stepping stones along the way, I'd say. So I've been doing it a while, and I feel like I've done a lot of the races along the way.
Yeah, and on the World Triathlon page on your profile, you have done 58 starts, and that's across Continental Cups and World Cups and World Triathlon Championship Series. And I think they also count, I may be wrong, but I think they count junior at least all of the junior and under 23 races as well. But it looks like you have mostly senior races on there, just from a quick scroll, with 22 podiums and 9 wins. So yeah, a very solid resume. Can we go into a discussion on your training and maybe start with an overview of things like you mentioned training in Loughborough, so talk a bit more about how that works. What is your training group, your coaches, your training partners, and then we can go into some training parameters and discussions.
Yeah, so British Triathlon is predominantly split into 2 centres. You have Leeds and Loughborough. They're our main hubs in the UK. I just so happened lived 15-20 minutes away from the university. So when I was kind of still at school and, that 14, 15 years old, I was coming down into the squad here and started doing a bit of swimming out of here and started doing a bit of cycling with the group. So I've kind of been in and around the centre environment for a long time, and it is it's just great being out of a university. Like, Loughborough is renowned for its sports facilities. It's got everything you need in one place, really, and I think that for me underpins the ease of living in Loughborough. Like, I live a mile and a half away from the campus, which has got it's got the pool, the track, the gym. It's got our physios, sports nutrition, physiology, the labs. Everything is there. So it just makes everything so easy for us to be there. And we have all the practitioners again are based in and around Loughborough. So not only obviously my coach Adam Elliott, who I've worked with since I was 15 as well. So obviously I have a really great relationship with him, but everything else is based out of the university. So everything's there, everybody's there. And I think that just underpins the basis of our training, basically.
And who are your training partners on a day-to-day basis?
So majority of my training do with Olivia Matthias. We just do a lot of our work together. She's one of my best friends. So we do a lot together. But the squad's, we've got Alex Yee in the squad as well. So with that, we have a really good boys side of things. So I do obviously a lot of my swimming with the boys, just with it being one of my strengths. It's good that I have the lads to train with. And then we've got kind of the up and coming guys as well. So Connor Bentley, Ben Dykstra. There's a group of us coming through, and we get on so well together. And I think that just enables everyone to kind of learn from each other, especially when you've got someone like, Alex with the results that he has. And having someone like that in the group, I think just brings a lot to everyone, really. So I think that's a big part of it. And the relationships just, I kind of think, underpin everything that we have, whether that's relationships with other athletes and the respect you have for each other and, what everyone brings to the group, or whether that's the relationships with the practitioners, the relationship with the coaches. It is a really tight-knit group. And I think that is one thing that it makes us quite successful.
Yeah, I'm sure. And what is your training like on a general basis when you're not tapering for a race or and traveling across the world? So when you're in Loughborough, how many hours per week do you train typically? How is that split across swim, bike, and run?
Yeah, so swim 5 times a week, kind of averaging about 25k a week, with Tuesday being just steady aerobic reps, bit of strength based in there. Wednesdays, long course, 6k, long reps, pull, that kind of another strength based swim. Thursdays are best pace VO2 kind of swim again, but the theme across all my swims is it's quite strength based. I'll never do a set without pull and band, paddles in. All my training across swim, bike, and run actually has a real strength element to it. So even when we're kind of doing best pace 50s, 100s, I'd say at least a third of that will be pull based, pull band, pull paddle, just say for a strength and mechanics point of view. Friday's a recovery swim, so it's just 4k. Again, probably some pull and band in there, mechanics loading type of thing. And then Sunday for me is the key swim of the week. It's a a threshold LT2 swim. So that'll be anything from 2.2k swimming 71s long course up to 3.2, 3.3k swimming 73s. And those reps will be nothing shorter than 300 meters, like they're quite decent reps. And again, there'll be some pull in there as well to, a bit more strength in the week. Bike program, do 2 bike sessions a week. So I ride 4 times a week, 11 to 12 hours. Monday is a kind of an on-off session. Again, another theme of my training is I never kind of do like best pace reps with like decent recovery. Everything's kind of on, off, over, under kind of work, whether that's bike or run. So that's kind of what we do on a Monday, whether that's short stuff like, 30 seconds on, 15 seconds off, or if that's opened up to, longer reps. But again, it's always a continuous recovery. Wednesday's a long ride, so 3 and a bit hours, but again, up to 90 minutes of tempo work in there, in long reps, 20, 25, 30 minutes. Thursday is just an easy mountain bike day. That's been put on the mountain bike just to kind of offload a bit, really. Like I struggle, the way I sit on a saddle, I struggle with like a pressure on my pubic bones. So it's kind of like a constant stress response. So we have to be really careful that I don't ride too much because it flares up and then get a super tight adductor and it's just, not ideal. So last couple of years that's kind of gone on the mountain bike, and we did some pressure point testing on saddles, and like obviously on a mountain bike you're sat more upright, so it massively offloads that area. So it's just enabled me to put a bit more riding in, and then through the winter I've done enough mountain biking now that if we have crappy weather, which is very common, it enabled me to do long rides or even sessions out on the mountain bike, which is just another option which saves me from going on the turbo basically. And then Saturday's a long ride for 4.5, 5 hours. Try and get up to the Peak District if I can. My husband is an ultra runner, distance runner, so he does a lot of training up in the Peak District. So point to point rides up to there, and it's just a good stimulus with the hills and the climbs and stuff. It's just something different. And then run wise, I run between 60 to 65k a week. 2 sessions, track session on a Tuesday, again predominantly on-off stuff like fartlek kind of training. Steady run on a Monday and a Thursday with some drills. Strength-based run on a Friday, normally tempo-based, but we'll do that hilly. So we'll do 35, 40, 45 minutes worth of tempo, but it's never quicker than 4-minute Ks just because it's pretty hilly. So I've ran that. I've not done that session this year. Like I haven't switched to doing more faster stuff or anything like that. I think next week is my first build tempo, but apart from that I was doing that all the way into Yokohama, and then long run on a Sunday, again 80 minutes. But the biggest thing for me has been since COVID, I've actually trained less in a week but just do it more consistently. Up to COVID I was a constant injury niggle. Every few months I'd be getting something, normally predominantly running related. So when COVID hit, it was kind of like an opportunity that we knew we weren't going to be racing for the year. And it was like, right, let's just pull everything back. But let's pull it back to a level that I can actually do week in, week out without having to have these massive periods where I've had to pull things back because I've been niggly and injured. So I actually train, if you look at it as a week, I actually train less than what I did 2018, 2019. But this is a level that I can do every week for 2.5, 3 week blocks to then have a couple of easy days. And touch wood, I've not been injured off this, and it's been able to give me a really good foundation to build from and race off.
How much does that add up to roughly in hours during a week?
About 27 hours, 28 hours with gym in there as well.
Yeah. And did you, when you pulled back from that pre-COVID level, was that something that was hard for you to do mentally or in any way? Just did you have confidence that it would help you? Or are you scared of letting go of training more that you would lose fitness? Or how was that process?
I think I'd got myself into a vicious circle, really, that you'd kind of spend time rehabbing and getting back from something. You'd then be constantly chasing to get fit because you've got a race on the horizon. So it was like we needed to put in a double run on a Monday. We needed to run on a Saturday. We needed to put extra mileage around sessions on the bike and stuff. And then it was just like this constant circle of that. And I think it wasn't until you knew that you had 6 to 8 months, which ended up being longer than that, but at the time we didn't know, of longer time, that it kind of gave us the opportunity to be like, you're not going to be racing anytime soon. It's like, use this time to like just make a foundation. And then obviously COVID period was longer than we thought. And it just, yeah, it was amazing, like how well I ran off that, how well I was riding off that. And we've just stuck to those principles. But I don't know, in a weird way, I kind of think COVID was a massive blessing in disguise for me, because I'm not sure I would have had the confidence to say, no, I'm going to do less. And I think it took something like that, knowing that I wasn't going to race for, well, what ended up being over 12 months, to kind of say, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we're going to try something else.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And when you talk about doing a lot of strength-based stuff in all of the disciplines, really, then is that something that Adam Elliott applies across a majority of his athletes, or is it something that you have found that works particularly well for you as an individual? And can you talk more about that?
It's definitely principles that underpin a lot of our training. I probably take it to the extreme with the amount I do and for the length of period I do. Like, I'm pretty much the only one in the squad that's still doing 40-minute hilly tempos up around Beacon where we live. Everyone else has come onto the flat and is getting ready to race. But I think just the athlete that I am and the balance in the week, like that's just how I seem to go the best off that. Like, I definitely didn't think I was going to be in the run shape that I was in Yokohama off the training that I'd done, but I think it's just the consistency of that training, and then the conversion of doing the strength-based stuff off the bike. I think I just massively respond to, and I think especially in Olympic distance, like that's just the way that I train and then race best.
So in the past, would you have leading into a race like Yokohama, for example, you would have been doing a lot faster running than the tempo-based hilly running that you were doing now? So shorter, faster threshold repetitions or something like that? Is that what it would have looked like before?
Yeah, we'd put like more running off the bike. We'd do a bike session and then we'd do like 3 by 2K off the bike sessions like that. We'd kind of do like 5-minute efforts off a static recovery, like kind of more of what I'd call like a standard session, what you'd probably see. Whereas, my track sessions, you kind of look at them and you kind of step off the track and you think, oh, it didn't feel that hard, but you've probably done a lot of work in that section. And it's not off a static recovery. Like I did track today was, a mile at 10K pace into 200 jog, and then rolled through basically like 200 on, 200 off, like continuous, like for the whole 7.5K on the track. Like I didn't stop once. And I know it doesn't work for everyone, but I definitely think that's the way that I can balance the week and also like improve as well.
Yeah. So running off the bike, how much of a role does that play in your program?
Not a lot, to be honest. I kind of maybe do 1, maybe 2 in the lead up to a race, but it's not a big session at all. It's normally 3 minutes hard off the bike, something like that, and then I'll make up the total volume so that if I then wouldn't run in the morning, so basically on a Mondays when we do our bike session and when I'd run off the bike, so instead of doing a 50-minute run in the morning, that would come out and I'd do 3 minutes hard off the bike, and then I'd run 20-25 minutes steady just to add a bit of volume in the week. But like I say, that I'd only be put in once, maybe twice, and I think previously I'd probably feel like I needed to put those sessions in. Whereas now I feel like I don't need the confidence from doing it. I take the confidence from the other bits in the training, and those bits are almost like feel good sessions rather than actually doing good for me.
Yeah. Let me see here. Yeah, so could we run through your last full week of training, Monday through Sunday? Is that possible?
Yeah. So Monday, 50-minute run. Steady, take the dog out, nothing crazy. Into a bike session, and I had 3 by 10 minutes over under within a 2.5 hour ride.
What are those over unders? If we're more specific, are they fairly, the overs and unders, are they fairly close to each other? Are we talking zone 5, zone 2, or zone 4, zone 3?
There's probably about just under 200 watt difference between the on and the off. And then as the year gets on, the rep length gets longer, and as it gets longer, the difference between the on and off comes down. So at the moment it's quite far apart, and then as we go and the reps kind of go from 30 seconds up, then the difference between the on and the off will become down, so it's much more of a flatter line, whereas at the moment it's obviously quite a big curve.
Yeah.
Right. And then Monday afternoon is physio. That's a regular thing every week. Monday afternoon physio. Tuesday morning we have a 5k swim, longish reps with some fly in there, strength-based stuff, pull band. This morning I had 2 8s, 2 6s mixed in with some other bits and bobs. And then track, again, total volume on the track, 7k, something like that. Again, follows a similar pattern, the on-off stuff, maybe with a longer rep at the start at 10k pace. Wednesday is our long swim of the week, 6k, long reps, maybe a bit of pace change in there. Long course for us. It's solid swim in the morning, 3-hour ride, and then that's where my second bike session of the week goes. But that's much more of a muscular conditioning session, so kind of up to 90 minutes worth of work at tempo LT1, kind of depending on what people call it, split into 3, maybe 4 reps. Getting used to being a bit more aero on my road bike, which I struggle with sometimes. So just dialing in those things, and just a bit of conditioning really. And then have gym in the afternoon. Thursday we have our VO2 swim. We've literally just switched that to go in open water. So the whole of our squad plus the development squad go down to the local lake, and we kind of have race pace reps, short reps, race simulation stuff. Like, it's kind of a real key swim for me. My open water skills are definitely a place to improve on, so like that's a key swim for me in the week. 90 minutes, 2-hour ride, put it on the mountain bike, normally go out with my husband and we stop for lunch. It's just a real chilled ride. And then another steady run, 50 minutes with some drills and strides. I think that's also been quite key for me, in just partly from an injury point of view. Like, I think the plyometric and the drill side of thing have really helped, but then also just in like a biomechanics, like transfer of run load and stuff. I think that's really helped me. And then we have some strides off the back of that to prep for Friday run session. Friday run session in the morning, like I say, I'm still doing tempo. We'll probably move that from just a standard hilly tempo to a flatter build tempo, but similar principles. And that will be within a 75-minute run, something like that. Then we have a steady swim in the afternoon, 4k.
The tempo that you have been doing is 30 to 40 minutes, you said, normally?
35, 40 minutes, with maybe a couple of shorter hill reps to start. But it's hilly. Like, I don't think I've ever ran that quicker than 4-minute Ks. It's somewhere between 4 to 4:10. It's just a solid effort, really. Steady swim in the afternoon, 4k, mixture of some band stuff, some stroke mechanics, 10 strokes max kind of thing. Saturday, long ride day, 4 to 5 hours. Try and vary it up. Jodie Stimpson sometimes comes down and rides. Kat Matthews is new to Loughborough now, so I've been kind of jumping in with her, and she's been dragging me around for some Saturday rides. So there's definitely other people to tap into, that, like the long course guys as well. Just steady ride, aerobic, and then second gym session in the week, Saturday afternoon. Sunday, long run. Another thing that's changed is I've pulled that back. So it used to be 90, 95 minutes. That's come back to 80 max. Again, another hilly run. Take it off the trails, kind of don't look at the watch. Normally ends up being 4:45, 4:50s. But again, another hilly run. And then we have the last session of the week, and probably my key swim is 5.5k, either 2k of threshold or 3k of LT2 stuff, so kind of in maybe like 73s, depending on where we are in the season. And they're just 500-600 meter reps, and like that again is a real like muscular conditioning session. By the end of that, your arms are about to fall off. It's a tough one.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it for sure. The gym sessions, we didn't talk about them yet. Well, what do they entail?
Yeah, so I think that's another thing for me. Like before COVID, I used to kind of do heavier stuff in the gym. And I don't know whether I just wasn't conditioned enough for it or it was just taking too much out of me in the week. But we kind of brought that back to real capacity stuff. So like low level body weight, low leg, like loading stuff. There was no real like heavy squats, leg press. There's nothing like that. It was kind of brought back to a real capacity level, and then kind of stuck that out for 2.5 years, and literally only after coming back from the end of season break this year we started to put in like 1 or 2 exercises a week, which are like a heavy weight. So I definitely think that bringing gym back to a more consistent capacity level gave me a better foundation to train off. And it was about injury prevention, whereas now I feel like the gym is slowly tipping from injury prevention, which obviously still is, but to more of a like improvement for swim, bike, run.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how long are you in the gym for normally?
About an hour, depending on how much I chat, but probably about an hour.
Yeah, yeah. What those exercises that you're now putting in that are heavier, what are the key exercises that are in your rotation?
So they kind of change every 6 to 8 weeks. We've had things like single leg, leg press, double leg press, hip thrusts, push like ISO holds, which obviously are heavy, but you're not really moving it. ISO holds, whether that's like a hip, like hamstring ISO hold, calf ISO holds, low box step ups are a new one that are going in. But I only kind of do maybe one exercise a session that I'd say was like a heavy session, a heavy load. Because I just think if I do too much of that, I feel like the knock on is negative for my training rather than positive.
Right. Yeah. And we already talked a bit about the changes you made and how that brought consistency to your training, which has obviously helped across the board, really, with your performances now. But especially if we look at your run, I feel, because I think from as a viewer, you have for quite a long time been up there in the swim and the bike and been able to be in those front pecs. But the run is where you have really taken huge steps in the last little while. So is there anything else to your run improvements that you think that this is a positive change that I made that has helped me improve my run?
I know it sounds like a broken record, but I think for me it's just the consistency. I think for someone who's not a natural runner, you kind of look at, Georgia or Beth or Cassandra, like those girls are like just natural runners. I think for me it's something that I have had to work on, but it's really difficult to find the balance of working hard at it but not getting too carried away that you do too much and therefore get injured. So I think, touch wood, I haven't had a niggle now since pre-COVID, and I think that has just allowed me to tick off 65k like pretty much week in, week out, and that has just enabled me to just slowly chip away and improve at that. So I think that's just been a massive thing, and I think that just takes time. There hasn't been massive changing in my program. Like we haven't sat there and gone, we're going to add this in, that in. Like it's been pretty consistent. If anything, I've just taken less out, but it's just meant that I've done a lot more through the year. And then I think the other thing is just running off the bike. My biking has improved a lot over the last few years, to a point where you take like a Yokohama, like that was still pretty far under like my second threshold, the ride, that you then come off of it and you're then enabled to just run pretty much full capacity because I'm not coming off the bike having worked close to my capacity. So I have done rides before, like I think back to, Leeds when I got my first World Series podium, and Leeds when I was in a breakaway with Taylor Spivey the year after. And those rides were a lot closer to the capacity that I had at the time, which is probably why my run suffered coming off the back of it. Whereas now I've kind of got 15-20 watts on where I was 2-3 years ago, and that has enabled me to just run a lot fresher off the bike. And obviously that's there to be used if the breakaway's there and to ride hard and stuff. But I've been fortunate that we've been in breakaways that are working, everyone's contributing, and therefore you don't need to completely red line it. And I think that has massively enabled me to then run better in races as well.
Yeah. Do you feel when you're in a breakaway, like in Yokohama, that like a sense of real confidence that you're one of the strongest riders there and also good technically? So you're not worried that, oh, this would be a hard ride? Do you feel like that you're well set up to go through the ride and not having exert yourself maximally?
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not sat there going like, oh, this is super easy. There's still points where, everyone's working, everyone's contributing, maybe Taylor Nibb's attacking and you're pulling that back in and stuff like that. But I think it's nice kind of going into races knowing that I have the ability to really redline if I need to, but also knowing that if you're in those breakaway situations, everyone wants that breakaway to go that's in it and everyone's willing to work, and therefore it all kind of works best and everyone is then able to run better off it as well. So it's just mutually beneficial when you're in that situation, I think.
Yeah. If we go and we go back to discussing your training environment a little bit more. One thing that I find interesting, and I mean, you already described it so well, you made a really good pitch for it. I would say that it makes me want to go there and train. But in a lot of other countries, you see athletes going to international squads, moving to places like Girona, or training in places like Flagstaff or Portugal or Australia. You actually went to Australia for a training camp, I know, but a lot of athletes do take the step of moving to a nice triathlon location that is kind of nice, at least throughout the year. Whereas I don't know if that can exactly be said from a weather perspective about Loughborough. So, but what is it that makes the athlete want to commit to staying there? And in Leeds, of course, similarly. Is it just the fact that it's so well set up with everything? Is there anything else to it, you think?
Yeah, I think, obviously, if you look at the centre as a whole, that it is very well set up. Like, obviously, training's difficult, but training's also, in a way, easy because everything's there, everything's where you need to be. And we're also so fortunate that where we are here, I honestly don't think I've ever been anywhere where there has been as much variety and accessibility to riding routes and running routes anywhere in the world. Because if someone was to tell me, they wanted to do a 4-hour ride and they wanted it to be flat, they wanted it to be hilly, they wanted to go off mountain biking for 3 hours, like, it has all those things. Similarly with running, like, you want to run on road, you want to run on gravel, you want to run hilly, you want to run like wherever. If you were to drive even just 10 minutes around wherever, all those things are accessible. Whereas, even when we were in Australia for a training camp, the running there is terrible compared to what it is in Loughborough. Like, there's hardly any off-road running. You have to drive anywhere and it's pretty much pancake flat. So there's just everything that you need in Loughborough. So I think from a facility point of view, from a versatility point of view of what you have around you, like, I honestly don't think there's anywhere better to train. And then on the flip side of that, like, this is also home for me. Like, and it's the same for, like Liv and Alex. That's the same for Ben Dykstra. Like, you kind of say to people, oh, like, when are you off home? And I'm like, no, I am home. Like, this is where I live. Me and Tom have a house here. We have dogs. We have chickens. Like, this is home. And I think that for me personally, like, that is probably the biggest thing for me performing well is my home life, and having something that's stable and it's just easy. It makes triathlon easy even on the bad days, because I come home and I'm home. Like, I never get that feeling of, oh, I've got to get 3, 4, 5 months through Girona and then I go home. Like, I don't have that. And I think that's a massive thing if you have that available, to kind of have a settled home life and a stable home life. It takes the pressure off the triathlon and the training and the racing.
Yeah, makes absolute sense. And I know you haven't specifically been, part of the lead squad, but I'm sure you've heard from your GB teammates and others what it's like training there. What would you say is it very similar to train there compared to in Loughborough? Are there some main differences between those two centres?
I think very similar in that they're both British triathlon hubs. So from that point of view, the practitioners, the facilities are all very similar. I think the biggest difference from Leeds is everything is a bit more spread out. there's not one place which is, you know, here and everybody kind of lives within a mile, 2 miles of, because that's where the one swimming pool is, that's where the gym is, the track, the bike circuit. Do you know what I mean? Like everything in Leeds is a bit more spread out, and therefore everybody is a bit more spread out around Leeds. But I think that's kind of the main difference of it. And obviously they have slightly different terrain. You know, they're in the Yorkshire Dales where they are. So like for us to get similar riding, we'd have to cycle to the peaks or drive to the peaks. But apart from that, they are pretty similar. And I think, again, if you were to go and ask, you know, whether it be Georgia or Jess or whoever, like they would give you a similar answer, that that's home, that's where they live, and that enables them to have a, you know, a stable home life to train off of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you do go to training camps, where have you been going for the last few years? What are the best locations that you've found? And what is the time of year that the training camps play a role in your training?
Yeah, so I think the big one for us is our Australia camp through January, February. It has a real focus on open water for us. It's probably the only thing, being in the UK, that we struggle with is being able to access open water. It's cold, and we can probably do it for maybe 3, maybe 4 months of the year. So it's not something that can be properly done. So for us, that's where the Australia camp comes in. Has a real focus on open water. We have a really good relationship with Phil Clayton out there, and he's knows everything about open water. So we kind of go out there and buy into his sessions and learn from him where we can. So that's been a big thing for us. We'll continue to do that, and I assume that will be something that will be ran all the way up to LA, and maybe even beyond, because I think it fits well. The heat's obviously good. Training for us at that time in the UK is hard. Like it's freezing cold. It's miserable weather. So it's a nice break from that. There's also the bike racing out there, and I think that's been something that's really good for us through that time, to kind of get your eye back into racing in a group. That's basically I did 3 bike races out there, which was the only bike sessions I did into Abu Dhabi. But I think it's just such a good way to kickstart, getting back into bike racing, riding hard. So that's something that we'll continue to do. I know a few of the Leeds lot are going up to altitude. That's just not something that I've done. It's not something that Alex has done. So it's just not something that really our centre will do. That being said, we do use the heat chamber quite a lot in Loughborough. I respond really well to heat as a kind of similar to altitude, kind of like blood plasma, and just race well off that. So that's something that I normally would run before races, regardless of how hot the race is, for a few sessions before. Won't go into our protocol, but something that we do use. And then we'll do a prep camp before the Paris test event in France, just to trial stuff for the Olympic team, for whoever goes for that. Somewhere hot again, just in case Paris is hot, and prepare for that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Where in Australia is the camp based?
Burleigh Head, so just down from Gold Coast. So we've been there a couple of times, and it'll be something that we continue to do. And maybe that previously that camp's been like 4 to 5 weeks, and then people have either stayed out for the World Cups, New Plymouth, Mooloolaba if it happens, or dropped into Abu Dhabi on the way home. So it just fits. It fits really well for what we're trying to do.
And the bike racing that you mentioned, that's something that the commentators on World Triathlon or Triathlon Live have been talking about during the races that you have been doing. But it wasn't clear to me, is it just those races in Australia that you have been doing, or have you also been doing races in the UK, bike racing that is?
Yeah, so we have a really good female cycle squad out of the uni called Loughborough Lightning. I still am, but I was part of that racing last year. So there was a series called the Tour Series, and it was an absolute baptism of fire being put into those races. It was, my head hurt more than my body, because there was so much thinking involved, and just it was just something I've never done before. So last year through March, April time, I went and did 4 of the World Series, 4 of the Tour Series, which are like consecutive weekends. And they were really good, like not just from a physiological point of view, but from a awareness and like confidence level. And it would have been something that I'd have done again this year, but unfortunately the Tour Series lost their funding, so it didn't happen this year. But but then managed to get some bike racing out in Australia done. But where it fits, I'd look to do some stuff through the year. And yeah, if things come up and whatever, then I definitely would jump in and do that, because I just think it's something that you can't recreate in training no matter how hard you try.
Yeah. Is that something you think, or let me rephrase that question. I'm sure that you found that helpful. That's why you're doing it. Are there any other things? Because you mentioned also how your bike has come along really nicely, and you're managing to ride and then run well off of it because you're not at the limit necessarily. So, are there any other key things in your biking that you think have contributed to this improvement, or is it just that you have been consistent and kept doing the things that work and done it for just longer and longer without interruption?
Definitely worked a lot closer with physiology the last couple of years. So Laura Needham's our physiologist, and definitely dialed in like what I'm doing and why am I doing it, rather than just kind of not blindly being set sessions, but there's definitely a lot more thinking behind the sessions and almost getting the biggest bang for your buck. Like, could I physically do another session? Could I physically do another rep? Yeah, probably could. But like, is it worth doing it? What is the cost of putting those extra bits in versus the rewards you get back? So we kind of set up a lot of the sessions. We did a lot of lactate testing last year. Like, she'd come down to the circuit and we'd do that to just see like, what is the point of doing more? Because more doesn't always mean better. And then from that, I've now had the capacity to have 2 bike sessions in a week, which is something that's only kind of come in this year. But again, like making sure that there's a lid on them, there's a cap on them, and it's not just ride really hard or do as much as possible, because I just think people can get really carried away with that. And that's probably my biggest thing from the last couple of years, that it's never just like one session in isolation. It's kind of like, how do you do the least amount of training but get the biggest reward from that? Because at the end of the day, the less training you do, the less of a risk you are to getting injured. And I'm not saying that I'm lazy and I try and get away with the bare minimum, but if you kind of work along that principles, you kind of just think like everything you put into that training week should be there for a reason. And that's not to say that you should only train 15 hours a week, because I don't train 15 hours a week, but almost like, if that thing's going in, or that extra rep or whatever is going in for a specific reason, because you have the capacity to do that, but you also have the capacity to do X, Y, Z in the week, then put it in. But if you're sat there going, I don't really know why I'm putting it in, and then going to be really tired for this, the knock-on effect's too big, then like, why is it going in? Because you have to look at training as like 3-4 week blocks, not just one session. So going back to the riding stuff, I think that's where we've just been really smart, that I don't have the capacity to ride 15-16 hours a week. So we put the mountain bike in. That's obviously really good as well, because it's skills and stuff off-road. You also have the peaks and stuff like power-wise, because you're off-road and sometimes you have to work really hard to get out of muddy bits or hilly bits or whatever. And then the other 3 rides that I do in the week like are all there for a purpose. And I think just the consistency again, but I think those things have definitely added up to giving me the improvements that I've managed to make.
You talk about managing the number of reps in a workout, and so that you can do more throughout the week in total, or that the balance is right. What about, has the physiology contributed to maybe what the intensity is like? Have you adapted the intensity that you're doing your workouts, your sessions, your reps at, or is it more the total amount of work, if that makes sense?
A bit of both. Like, we've done a lot more bike testing even just this year, just to kind of again make sure that even if things are stepping forward or maybe like stepping back, if kind of had a couple of easy weeks or recovery weeks, whatever, that you're kind of doing those sessions at the right point. So we've definitely been doing a lot more testing to kind of set up the sessions and really be quite specific on them. And I think sometimes that's led to me not being able to do as many sessions with the group, because we've kind of gone down the route, like I said before, like getting the most out of each session. And sometimes that means not doing it with the group, just to make sure like it is really nailing what we're trying to do. Like this last couple of blocks, I've done some stuff on the turbo, which I'd never normally do. We thankfully have a closed circuit, which is like a K long. the amount of loops I've done around there on my own are unbelievable. But I think if you can kind of get over the it's boring bit and you can really dial in what you're trying to do, like you can be really specific and therefore get the most out of it and the most out of in the week. And I kind of said 18 months ago, like, I really want to put everything in to try and make in the Olympics. And if that means doing sessions on my own around the circuit, that's what it means. And in the week, I definitely have a balance that one ride I'm on my own doing laps and laps and laps of this circuit. And then on a Thursday, I take the mountain bikes out with Tom and we go and have lunch. So it's definitely about finding the balance, and not everything is super specific, but the bits that are, like, they are really dialed in.
Yeah. What about the low intensity endurance stuff that you're doing across the three disciplines? Really, is that all feel based, that it should feel easy, or do you have some specifics in place, basically safeguards in place based on testing that you've done or anything like that? How do you manage that low intensity training?
I suppose swim wise, it kind of takes care of itself. Like, I'd never really swim slower than like 80s, 82s swimming, whether that was like an easy swim on a Friday or like easy reps on a long thing. Like, they'd never go slower than that anyway, because again, like, my mechanics just go a bit crap. And it's just kind of not worth it. So kind of, I prefer to swim 77, 78 is probably where I'd like to swim, and it feels the best. So like, I feel like swimming kind of takes care of itself, especially when you're in a group environment. It kind of, you have to make the turnarounds anyway. Riding, the only steady ride that I do outside of my spin on a Thursday is a long ride on a Saturday. And I kind of work on the premise that as long as that's kind of like over 150 watts, it kind of is what it is. And if it's hillier and I'm feeling good and it comes back at 175, 180 because I've ridden up to the peaks and I felt good. If I've been a bit more tired and it's come back at 155, then that's also fine. But again, like, I wouldn't just ride around at 130 watts, because you might as well, for me, I might as well be sat on the sofa recovering. Like, it's kind of a bit pointless. And then run wise, I do a lot of running off road, up around the trails, up around the hills. So again, I would never run outside 5-minute Ks, but it would fluctuate between 4:30s if it was flatter to 4:50s if it was hillier and a bit muddier. But I think I've the older I've got, the more in tune I've got with finding that balance of, okay, I'm a bit tired, or okay, this is hillier, or okay, this is like how it's meant to feel. But I definitely don't do junk stuff in the week. I'd say it was all kind of stripped back, but everything was in for a purpose, and therefore, not that everything's hard, but nothing's just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, to put those numbers in perspective for listeners, especially because as you probably know, there's a lot of amateur athletes that probably run the same speeds as you, but then they might be 10 minutes slower, or the 10K. What is your 10K PB in the triathlon?
Probably Yokohama, so 33:50. I ran off the bike in Yokohama.
Yeah, and in terms of cycling, when you said that you have been doing like lactate testing, for example, what is your LT1, LT2?
LT1 is kind of about 230. LT2, trying to get it up to 285, and I'm just below that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that of course a lot of listeners will compare to something like FTP testing, and I'm sure that would be significantly higher than LT2. Depends a bit on what lactate testing protocol you use, but yeah, obviously like really good numbers. So let's see here. Yeah, so one question that I have is, now you're all in on Paris, on qualifying first of all, and then I'm sure on doing the best you can. Have you thought at all about life after Paris? What you're going to focus on then?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I feel like I kind of just want to make Paris and then hopefully be there, and then can make a decision afterwards. I feel like I'm putting a lot into trying to make that games and being able to stand on that start line and genuinely feel like I could be in with a shot of a medal, and whether that comes out with one or not is a different thing. But that's kind of the goal over the next, less than 18 months now. And I probably, obviously the PTO is coming in now with more of the 70.3 stuff, which if you'd have said 5 years ago, would you go long? I'd be like, absolutely not. It doesn't interest me. Whereas I feel like now with what the PTO are doing and kind of like how exciting that racing looks, it is something that starts to interest me a bit. I definitely am not feeling the love of Ironman, but that's a bit far for me. But I think half is something that I could get on board with. But whether or not that's another Olympic cycle or not, TBC after Paris and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. And then I have a bit of a quick fire round with some fun and interesting numbers, mostly, I guess. So the first one is, what were your total training hours in 2022? And also if you can separately list swim, bike, run training hours.
So I don't actually put my swim into like a training piece or something. Basically, if I have a Garmin on, it will go on. If I don't, it doesn't. So I can only give you biking and running. But
right.
My biking was 350 hours in 2022. And my running was 184 hours.
Right. If I'm just doing some quick math, if you're doing 25K a week swimming, maybe you don't do that every single week, but let's say you do that for 48 weeks of the year, then there would be, oh gosh, how much per week? 6 hours of swimming, perhaps, and times 48. Yes. Can that be right? Two close to 300, 250 to 300. Yeah. Okay. Best VO2 max ever measured?
73.
And best 400 meter swim time, or if you have another time trial that you do?
4:24, but that was a while ago. But we do a set swimming that's 3/400s off like a decent recovery best pace, and I'd hold about 4:30 for that. So
nice.
Yeah.
For one single all out, you could probably beat that.
I reckon, if I did one, maybe 4:20, maybe.
Yeah. Best Olympic distance, bike power or normalized power, whichever you think is more relevant.
I think it would have been Leeds World Series, and it was 2:71.
Best standalone running performance.
Again, I haven't really done one since just after COVID, or just as COVID was kind of coming out. But I ran 10K in 33:22.
And typical sleep duration per day, including naps?
Probably 9 to 10 hours, 9 hours overnight, and then normally a nap in the day.
And this one you already kind of mentioned, but when and what was your first ever triathlon? And do you remember how it went?
It was Clifton Triathlon in 2003, and I won. So baby Sophie, 8 years old, got her first win in 2003.
Yeah. And if you can give 3 pieces of advice to age group triathletes listening to this on how to improve their triathlon performance, what would that be?
More is less. Less in the week, but if you can do it back-to-back weeks, that's much more efficient way of training. The timing of recovery. So I think that's been a massive thing for me, and I owe a lot of credit to Tom for, is being able to come back in from sessions and breakfast being ready, food being ready, even if it's just a recovery shake that you kind of get in as soon as you finish. I think that's also enabled me to back up training and be able to, kind of put consistent work in through the week. And then one last thing, I think not like looking too much into one session, like whether one session is amazing or rubbish. You kind of just need to forget it, and at the end of the day, you've still done that session, even if it's not great, and then look at the week as an overall and be like, oh, actually, I ticked off 99% of the stuff and I did all of it pretty well. And I think, not getting het up on one session when it doesn't go to plan. I think you just lose a lot of brain power over those sessions.
No, that's a really good piece of advice. And let's finish off with the rapid fire questions that I ask every guest. And let's start with, what's your favorite book or resource related to endurance sport?
I don't actually do that much reading around it, to be fair, but I do kind of similar. I love the YouTube documentaries that people put out, you know, whether that's like your Sweat Elite kind of ones or people's personal YouTube documentaries, That Triathlon Life, Lucy Charles, Lionel Saunders. Like I love seeing what other people do and kind of, what they're putting out. I really enjoy watching those.
And what's an important habit that you've benefited from athletically, professionally, or personally?
Being prepared, whether that's prepared for nutrition, whether that's being prepared for recovery, whether that's being prepared just in general life to make, you know, just small things like packing your swim bag the night before, being prepared to make your life easier when you get up. I think that has been a good habit to just get into across, personal or professional life.
And who's somebody that you look up to or that has inspired you?
Kelly Holmes. When she won her first gold medal, that was the first sporting thing that I remember watching when I was younger. And at the time I thought it was amazing, but it wasn't until you kind of, as I got older and learned about her backstory and like how much she struggled through, and yet she still came out with 2 Olympic gold medals. Like, that for me has and always will be the person that I think has inspired me the most through sport.
Perfect. And where can people follow you? What is the best social media channel or any other outlets that you have?
Probably on Instagram, just at Sophie Coldwell. I post a nice variety of training dogs and chickens and chocolate and all other things on there. So that's probably the best place on there. And
just remind us, when are you racing next?
Racing in Montreal, so middle of June, 24th of June, doing the individual and the relay there. That's the next one for me. And then I'm just doing the relay in Hamburg before the test event in Paris in August.
Will Montreal be the super sprint format that they've had in the past this year as well, or is it a classic sprint distance?
No, it's just a sprint distance. That's been moved to Hamburg this year, so they kind of move things around. Right. So Montreal's just sprint and relay.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sophie. This has been super fun and interesting to hear about your training, and all the best for the season and the Olympic qualification especially.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I hope that you enjoyed that interview. As always, you can find the show notes on scientifictriathlon.com. And be sure to check out the previous interviews that I've done with other professional triathletes, something that I started doing earlier this year. So we've had Frederick Funk on in episode 380 and Tamara Jewett in episode 391. And we'll get a few more on throughout the course of this year for sure. If you want to improve your triathlon performance and level up to achieve your next goal, there's probably no single better thing that you can do than to get some expert help along the way. At Scientific Triathlon, we provide coaching services that cater to every need, from beginners to professionals, where the athlete is in the center. The coaching is grounded in communication and individualization, and the coaches all have a wealth of experience, knowledge, and coaching skills. If coaching is out of your budget or not for you for whatever reason, we also have ready-made training plans for different athlete levels and goal events. And hundreds, if not thousands of athletes have already set big PBs and reached new performance levels and achieved goals with these plans. So they are a great option. These plans also have exchange and or money-back guarantees, so it is a risk-free investment. You can find out all about our coaching, training plans, customized training plans, and consultation options on scientifictriathlon.com. And to discuss these options in detail, you can email me on michael@scientifictriathlon.com. Finally, big thanks to our sponsors, Precision Fuel and Hydration, that you can find on precisionfuelandhydration.com. If you're looking for electrolytes and fueling products, I would highly recommend trying them out. You can use their free fuel and hydration planner or even a free video consultation with the team to prepare your race strategy. And don't forget to take 15% off your first order with the code TTS23. And thank you to Form, that you can find on formswim.com/TTS. Improve your swim training with real-time metrics like pace, stroke rate, and heart rate, and advanced post-swim analysis. Use the code TTS15 to get 15% off the Form Smart Swim goggles. Thank you, as always, for listening. Keep training smart and keep loving triathlon.